Hello and welcome to episode number 33 of Chel Squared. I'm your host, Andrew Chonley, and as per usual, we've got a ton to talk about today. Before we get into it here, please make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Chel Squared and on Facebook at Chel Squared for more hot takes, news by featured guests, poll questions, and a whole lot more. Please rate the show if you enjoy listening. It means more to me than I can put into words. And every time you either like the show on SoundCloud, give it a rating on iTunes, follow it on Spotify, etc., a puppy gets a hug from its owner. I don't make the rules here, just making sure you are in the know. If you prefer listening to podcasts on YouTube, search Chel Squared Podcast, and the show is there too. We're breaking up today's episode into two sections. The first half will be all about the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we'll talk about the surging New York Islanders in the second half. In case you haven't heard, the Leafs pulled the trigger on a big move the other day. The Leafs acquired defenseman Jake Muzzin from the LA Kings in exchange for forward prospect Carl Grundstrom, defenseman Sean Durzi, and this year's first-round pick. 30 NHL teams should now be afraid. I've said it multiple times before, the Leafs' biggest problem this season is their blue line. It's not perfect now, and I would expect GM Dubas to continue working the phones, but this is a big step, I believe, in the right direction for Toronto. Not only that, Muzzin's only making $4 million until the end of next season. Very team-friendly contract. We'll get into the prospects involved, the first-round pick, and what this means for both teams moving forward. Also, with Toronto trading two prospects, what does that mean for their pipeline? How good is the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs as of today? With Muzzin being added to the team, the Leafs now have just over $4 million in cap space, according to Cap Friendly. But I mean, hey, guess what? Austin Matthews needs a new contract this season. So does Mitch Marner. So does Kasperi Kapanen. So does Jake Gardiner. How is Toronto going to handle this after the postseason? The Leafs are in cap hell, but that doesn't mean they're not on a hunt for a rental or two to potentially push them over the edge for the Stanley Cup this season. What other potential moves can the Leafs look at? We'll talk about all of that, the poll question, and a whole lot more. Joining me for the first half of the show is Marley's beat reporter for Fansided and co-editor of Editor-in-Leaf, Mike Stevens. Mike, how are you? Hopefully staying indoors today. It's really cold.
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on. This is gonna be a fun episode because Jake Muzzin is a Leaf, and there's certainly a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. So before we get into the super nitty-gritty here, super important question for you. Do you have a song that you listen to that has a specific backstory behind either how you discovered it or why you still listen to it?
Oh boy, you really sprung this on me. I would say, so you ever seen the movie Drive?
No. I want to preface this by saying I'm not a big movie person. So okay. I tend to not watch a whole lot of movies. So my friends make fun of me a lot for it. They're just like, we can't reference anything with you because you won't get it. I'm like, yeah, I don't watch a whole lot of movies.
Well, it's a great movie. So if you are going to watch a movie, I'd watch that one. It's Ryan Gosling. There's this song that plays, I think, twice in it. It's called Real Hero by Electric Youth. It's really kind of ethereal. And so I love that movie. So I listened to it as well. And then, I met my girlfriend when we were like 13 and we went to high school together and everything. And during that time, we both were really into that movie and we would listen to that song over and over again. And so whenever I'm, feeling nostalgic right now, I kind of put that song on. It's really nice. And yeah, I'd say, I'm forgetting what it is called now. A Real Hero by Electric Youth would probably be the answer.
That's interesting. I was reminded of this yesterday. I mean, which is why I made this question for you. Because on April, I used to work at Syracuse University. I used to work at the radio station Z89, your party station Z89, top 40 radio station. And for April Fools last year, we switched it to I think the official title was Punk Rocks Z89 with a Z at the end or whatever. It was a one-day punk rock station for April Fools, and I was doing my show with actually one of my roommates, well, former roommates now, who also works at Z89 because my usual co-host couldn't make it. So we were doing a thing on air, and out of nowhere, there comes a song up next on cue called Born to Be Alive by Patrick Hernandez. Neither of us have ever heard this song, so we're like, I mean, I guess we're going to play it. We don't know what it is. And we play it, and it's like the 70s pop dance song that no one has ever heard of, I guess, besides the person that put it into our program. I mean, it was so wild. It's like this disco-esque dance song, and it's on. I've never heard of Patrick Hernandez prior to that incredible April Fool's Day, but after that moment, it's kind of like a running joke between me and that roommate. Shout out to my roommate Jordan. That it's and yesterday he was on air and he put out this question like, oh, like what should we play? What should I put on today? And of course I slipped in the Born to Be Alive song, and of course he texted me saying, listen to ZD9 right now because I'm about to play it, and he played it yesterday. So it's kind of like a running joke between us, and no one knows what it is. If I play it, I've even talked to some older people and they have no idea what it is. So I guess like this song is just completely in the dark, but this is a song that means more to me than I think to pretty much anyone else. Well, me and Jordan, I guess. I mean, this is just a running joke, and honestly, it's a bop. It is a bop and a half. It's not even that it's a bad song. Like it's really good. It's really catchy. So if you're into 70s disco, I guess, give that song a try.
Oh yeah, I'm 100%. After we hit the stop on this recording, I'm looking it up for sure. I need to know what this is because you like the sell job that you just gave it to me. I mean, it might become the soundtrack to my 2019.
It's really good. I mean, neither of us knew what it was. We were like, okay, well, we might as well play it because I mean, we'll learn something new. And it ended up being this running joke that now, what is that, like from April, almost 9 months later, we still talk about it. I mean, Jordan played it on air yesterday. So it's definitely a song that, I mean, people really don't know about. People don't really, I mean, I don't know how people that know about this song, but it's definitely an interesting one, and it's catchy. It's you could vibe to it for sure.
Oh, I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah,
you sold me.
So before I lose everyone here, the Leafs made a big move.
We're talking about that.
This is a hockey show. First and foremost, music as an aside. The Leafs acquired Jake Muzzin. Big move. I mean, his analytics are through the roof. He has incredible stats. I mean, offensively, kind of not as much of a performer, but in every other aspect of the game, he is incredible at what he does. 4 goals and 17 assists for 21 points this season. He's 30 years old next month, and the Leafs gave up a pretty decent haul for him. They gave up a forward prospect in Carl Grundstrom, defensive prospect Sean Durzi, and this year's first-round draft pick. So I don't know a whole lot about these players, which is why a big reason why I brought you on is because you obviously you're the Marlies beat reporter for Fansided. You've watched Carl Grundstrom in the AHL, Sean Durzi still in juniors in the OHL, and also a potential first round draft pick for the LA Kings this season. So tell me about Grundstrom. Tell me about Durzi. What are these guys bringing to the table that LA saw in them?
Well, I wrote about this yesterday. With Grundstrom, just to kind of break down what the Leafs kind of gave up in him, what the Kings are getting in him. So first of all, the getting Muzzin for that package is incredible. It's a steal. Like every single trade proposal, especially for a guy like that of his caliber, of what he can do, how he's good at just about everything, and he can slot into your top 4, and he instantly makes the Leafs top pairing. I think according to Corsica, the 8th best in the league, opposed to like probably one of the worst, and not having to give up one of Bracco, Liljegren, Sandin, Kapanen, Nylander, Janssen, any of those guys. It's fantastic to get a player like that. I think he honestly does put the Leafs over the top. He's exactly, save for him being left-handed, he's exactly what they need right now. In terms of what they gave up for Grundstrom, so LA is in, it's kind of a running joke to say that LA is in a bad cap situation right now. I mean, just because that's sort of what's going on in the public sphere. But I took a deep dive into it yesterday, and boy, it's bad. Like I don't know what happened there. If they just had like a mandate to sign old guys to long-term deals, but like just around, I think like 2013 or something. But there are 8 players on the roster right now who are going to make over $4 million a year. We're set to make over $4 million a year. Hey, I haven't even got to the best part yet, because 7 of them are 31 and older.
Oh no.
And the lone holdout is Drew Doughty, who's 29 and will count 11 million against the cap until 2026, 27.
Oh
so
no.
How you remedy that, how you get yourself out of that, is by acquiring cost-effective, cheap guys to fill your, because no matter whatever they want, like whether they like it or not, they're committed to this core, this high-price core. And how you keep a high-price core intact is you acquire these cost-effective, young, skilled guys who can be put into depth roles, be sort of like supporting pieces, and fill out the ancillary spots in your roster with that. And that's exactly kind of what Grunstrom provides, is in that he's got no performance bonuses on his ELC because he was a second-round pick. His ELC runs through next year, so even if he was assigned to the Ontario Reign of the AHL today, but honestly, where the Kings are at right now, he could probably slot in and provide at least a little bit of a spark on like the fourth line in a winger role. So he's exactly the kind of guy who they need right now as like a young. He's got some upside. His floor is, I think, that of an NHLer. Like I don't think he's going to flame out and not be like a bit of an. I don't think he's going to flame out and not make the NHL. But just where he goes from there is kind of capped. I think he kind of tops out as like a third line guy, a good third line guy. But for how young he is, what his price tag is going to be, that's exactly what they need right now. And further on Grunstrom, he's what separates players in his age group in the AHL is whether or not they have like dynamic skill. So a guy like Kasperi Kapanen scored relatively the same pace as Grunstrom is this year in his first season with the Marlies. It's Grunstrom's first full season with the Marlies as well. But what makes Kapanen sort of elevated into an NHL top six is that he's got that dynamic speed. Same with William Nylander. He's good at many things, but he's got these dynamic qualities that kind of elevate him above sort of just an AHL producer into that NHL top six. And I think Grunstrom, while he's performing decently from a points per game perspective, like he's only 20, as I said, and I think he's scoring at a 0.68 points per game. He doesn't have dynamic qualities. Like he does everything all right. Like the list of things that he does good it's long, but the list of things that he does great is really kind of non-existent. And I think that kind of caps his potential. So that I think number one, that made him expendable to the Leafs, first of all, because even though their prospect pool is kind of thinning a bit, this isn't a guy who's going to like challenge for a top six role, I think, moving forward. So they felt they could give him up now as well. And it also allows LA to kind of fill those depth spots on the roster with a young, cheap, skilled guy. He's good in front of the net in the sense that he can create space for himself and find space for himself. And then he's also gotten way better off the rush. He used to be relatively one-dimensional in terms of a net front presence, but ever since coming over to the Marlies, he's gotten that foot speed back up, and he's gotten way better off the rush. He's got a wicked shot that he can get off really quickly. So those two things are going to help him up at the NHL level. But I do think that the Kings got I would say a B-level prospect out of Grunstrom. Dursey, I spoke with Dursey at Marlies training camp. I don't know a ton about him because I don't scout the OHL. Right. So I don't know a ton about him from a player perspective, but it is kind of sad. I tweeted a sort of thread about this, is that he was so excited to be a Leaf. I remember talking to him. I asked him sort of what his experience was at Leafs camp, because he was down at Marlies camp, and he said it was amazing. He just gushed about getting paired with Morgan Riley really briefly, and how he looks up to John Tavares and all the preparation he has. He was just really excited to be part of the Leafs, and he grew up as a Leafs fan, just as apparently every player in the NHL has now. And so that's a bit of a bummer, just from a personal perspective, if you want to kind of invest your emotions into it. And that, like, it's like if you got, drafted by your hometown team and then they traded you before you could even play a game. And then we've been looking at reports from Elliot Friedman, a guy and even James Myrtle in his piece, earlier this week put out that some scouts were kind of souring on Dursey. And again, I don't know too much about him from a player's perspective, but I think that the fact that they were able to give up Dursey instead of a guy like Liljegren or Sandin, who are infinitely closer to the NHL and I think have more upside, that's a win for sure. Like, you cannot paint it in any other direction. Let's say Dursey becomes a solid NHL player. That's fantastic, but that won't be until at least, before he even gets a sniff of the NHL, at least another 3 years. And by that point, the Leafs could have a cup. So I don't think it'll really matter. And then when it comes to the first round pick, that will be in the high 20s, actually, not the low 20s, the high 20s. And as this is kind of being the mainstream kind of train of thought here is that once you get kind of into the 20s of the first round, the difference between a high second round pick and a low first round pick kind of becomes negligible. So these are three assets the Leafs gave up for a guy who's cost controlled. He has a phenomenal cap hit in Jake Muzzin, and they gave up three assets who either weren't going to really challenge that for meaningful roster spots in the immediate future, and a pick that probably won't. And given how the Kings draft, they've been able to kind of sneak some gems lately. So I don't know. We'll see what they can do with it. But a draft pick that likely won't make or break the bank. So this is 100% a win for sure for Calgary.
So with the Leafs trading two prospects, not A tier like you mentioned, what does that mean for their pipeline? How good is the future of the Leafs as of January 31st, 2019?
Well, so this definitely impacts. This definitely has an impact. Like losing Grundstrom right now, I think he was top 5 in Marley scoring. He was an important part of their power play. He was a top line contributor on their Calder Cup winning super team last year. So this is like, at least from a pipeline perspective, this is not insignificant. Like they're going to feel this. They're going to have some guys step up. But at the same time, their pipeline is okay at the moment given the needs up front. So they have a guy like Trevor Moore, who, obligatory Trevor Moore mention on this podcast, but he's ready to kind of step into, I would say, even higher than a fourth line role right now. I think he even offered a bit more upside than Grundstrom. So the fact that even though Grundstrom's younger, the fact that they didn't have to give up more and they gave up Grundstrom is a win. But so they have a guy who can fill a need that they need right now. They have Sandin has been fantastic this year. He's been sheltered relatively, just like Liljegren was last year, but he has exceeded all expectations. And once he gets back from his elbow injury, the sky's the limit for him. Liljegren is he's a funny case because I've heard that on 31 Thoughts this week, Elliot Friedman put out that some scouts are saying that he's not that, that they're kind of souring on him and that he hasn't fulfilled expectations. And I'm like, well, my first thought was that's their loss, because what comes with this is when you aggregate stuff like this, it loses a lot of context. And Liljegren is kind of being put through what Dermott was at the start of the Marley season last year, in that he's being played top pair minutes on the penalty kill, not given a ton of offensive zone starts. He's really kind of being put through the ringer, and we forget about what happened with Dermott last year, is that he didn't score for 20 games to start the year because of this usage. And so Liljegren's he's a top parent. He's only 19 as well, so he's a year younger than when Dermott was when he went through this whole process. But he's a right-handed defenseman. He's going to be cost controlled for 3 years now because the LC slid last year. He's only got $400,000 in performance bonuses moving forward. Same with Sandin. So that's okay when it comes to the top end of a pipeline for an immediate contender. And then you trickle down. But when you trickle down, I think that's kind of where things get dicey. Like you have a guy like Mason Marchment who, will probably top out as a Grundstrom type, a third liner, maybe. Then a guy like Timashov is really disappointed this year. He's been taking a lot of penalties, and I honestly wouldn't be shocked to see him move. So once you kind of trickle down from the top, the big three kind of at the top and then there's Bracco, obviously, who's been phenomenal this year and I think could really turn into something. So that's another. But once you trickle down from those four at the top with Liljegren, Sandin, Moore, and Bracco, there's not a ton, which is why giving up that first round pick gave some fans anxiety. But at the same time, the Marlies have been known for plucking guys off an ECHL scrap heap and turning them into, potential NHL, either good supporting depth pieces or even higher. So if there's any organization that can kind of shed that sort of prospect capital at this moment, it would be them.
This is a little bit out of left field, but I just got this notification from Adrian Wojnarowski, who's the top NBA insider.
Did Davis get traded?
No, but he just tweeted out that I'm a Knicks fan, unfortunately.
Oh, I just saw it.
Kristaps Porzingis left the Knicks with the impression that he prefers to be traded. So basically, I hate everything. And why do I even bother with the Knicks?
Dude, I'm so sorry.
I've been a Knicks fan for as long as I can remember, and honestly, like that tweet just killed me. I love KP. I have a KP jersey. I love KP, and I'm very I read that, and this is nothing to do with hockey, Ed. This is just a quick little aside.
Oh
But
no,
I
you
mean,
can take as much time as you need. You're grieving right now.
I
Take as much
am
time as you need.
pretty upset that KP wants to leave. See, my voice even cracked. That's how bad, that's how bad it is. But yeah, no, I am pretty rattled that KP wants to leave New York. I mean, obviously the Knicks are awful, but they're also tanking for Zion, so I'm upset. Anyway, basketball aside, getting back on track here. So with the trade for Jake Muzzin, right? Jake Muzzin's contract is very team friendly, like I said, $4 million until the end of next season. But the Leafs now have just over $4 million in cap space, according to Cap Friendly. Let's say the cap next year goes up to $7 million, fine. So you have $7 million to sign Matthews, Marner, Kapanen, Gardner. Where is this money going to come from? Because they have a lot of money tied up in Tavares, William Nylander, obviously. They still have Marlowe until next season. Where is this money going to come from? I mean, I would assume that they don't re-sign Ron Hainsey, who's making $3 million this year. So fine, $10 million. That's still not a lot of money for... I mean, I don't even know if that's enough money for Austin Matthews. I mean, what are the Leafs going to do to get out of this cap hell that they're currently in? Unless, of course, I mean, the only thing that I can think of right now is if they win the cup this year, and pretty much, I mean, there's no other way besides, I guess, trading one of these big guys, because they don't have enough room to sign everybody. No matter to me, it feels like no matter what they do, there's still going to be at least one or two players that they just won't be able to sign, no matter what they try to do. So there's a problem in Toronto in terms of cap space. I mean, obviously that's not a question right now because they're in a cup run, I would assume. But for right after the cup final, right the day after, the morning of the hangover, I guess, if they do win, or the day after the final, no matter who's playing, this is the biggest problem. I guess it's the biggest problem right now, but that's not the biggest concern because obviously they're going for a cup. So let's say it's the middle of June, the cup finals are over. Either the Leafs won or they didn't win, doesn't really matter in this question. So let's say it's a week or two from July 1st. They still have all of these problems that I just talked about. What do they do? What is Kyle Dubas doing to fix this problem?
If the Leafs don't win the cup in this scenario,
it doesn't. I mean, if they do or they don't,
yeah, okay,
if I don't think it really matters in this situation because the problem is still there. So regardless of whether they win or not, they still have to figure this out.
Totally. Well, if you look at next year, like next year's really, people talk about how, this is going to be cap hell moving forward. How are the Leafs going to? Next year is really the only year where it hits the hardest. Next year is really the only year where it's going to be really tight. And that's where, as I said, with the Kings, these cost-effective young guys, young depth pieces kind of come into play. And so how you get out of this is with Nikita Zaitsev, I think this is obviously easier said than done. This is NHL, 19 armchair GM kind of thing, but you just need to get that cap hit off the books through any means necessary, whether that means you trade him and include like a second rounder for someone to take it. You like that $4.5 million that he's making just cannot be on the books next year. Same with the Muzzin trade kind of complicates this a little bit more, but Gardner's going to be gone most likely. Also, getting Connor Brown, Trevor Moore is, I would say, Trevor Moore is like a replacement for Connor Brown. I think everyone kind of thinks that, and I certainly believe that. So he can help and also make Connor Brown expendable. And when you look at these guys who are making maybe a bit too much for their current role, or at least a bit too much for their current role based on where their team's cap hit is going to be, they also have value. Like a guy like Nikita Zaitsev, believe it or not, like I fully believe that he has value. I think that the GMs around the league look at a right-handed defenseman like that who somehow has the I guess visage of a puck mover, who put up the points he did in his first year. I think he has value. A guy like Connor Brown, who works really hard, who was a former 20 goal scorer, no one will ever be able to take that away from him, that he's a former 20 goal scorer. They're looked upon as value. So it's not like the Leafs have these onerous deals that they just need to get out from under and no one's going to take them. But at the same time, you've guys like Patrick Marleau, who I believe the intangibles, and this is the only time I'll ever say this, but I believe the intangibles kind of outweigh the cap problems that he's gonna bring, because he just matters so much to this team. So it's going to be tight, that's for sure. But that's why you have a system down in the Marlies that are producing these guys, and whether or not you're going to have Callie Rosen, who just got signed to a 2-year extension, who can take over in a left-handed defense spot if you need him, who's a phenomenal puck mover. He's killing it on the Marlies this year. They would be in last place in the EHL without him this year. He's been phenomenal. So he can come up, make $700,000 or however much he is. Trevor Moore is going to be making a smidge above league minimum. Then you even if you want to get crazy, a guy like Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin, as I said, they're both guys on ELCs that can come up. So they're cost-effective options as well. For crazy as it may sound, the Leafs also have Justin Hall, who is also making a smidge above league minimum, who can come up, and I think that he absolutely needs to get a bigger role this year, let alone next year. So you have these guys in the pipeline right now, whether they're considered prospects or not, who don't make a ton of money, who can fill these roles. Maybe they're a bit of a step down, not Trevor Moore, but maybe they're a bit of a step down from who they're replacing. But the fact that you have the core up front that you can keep intact with Matthews, Tavares, Muzzin, Riley, Nylander, Marner, guys like that will help you immensely. And it also, they just need to bridge the gap until that next year, until Marlowe's deal comes off the books, until even Muzzin's deal comes off the books, and they can kind of sort of rejigger. And that's exactly what teams like when they were good, when the Blackhawks did and the Penguins do, is that they pay their core high, a crazy amount of money to keep them intact. Those are the guys who are going to stay with you and win you cups forever. And you just plug and play the guys around them with cheap, Tyler Ennis signings or, guys in the system. And then once they demand more money, okay, fine. Well, we have like 3 guys in the system who can replace you right now. So I think that is essentially that's the route that they're going to have to take, as well as the fact that the cap's going up a bit. So it's doable. It's just going to take some, it's going to take some shuffling. And at the same time, the Leafs have one of the guys who helped write the CBA for them. So if there's going to be any loopholes that they can use, if there's going to be any way that they can squeeze every last little cent out of this, Brandon Pridham's going to help them do that. So I think that they're in a pretty good position to weather this and bridge that gap into the next year. And hopefully once they do, we can stop hearing about this every intermission.
So I'm not good at math here, so stop me if I'm wrong. So the Leafs have $4 million or around there in cap space right now, right? Say the cap is up to $7 million next season. Fine. You take Hainsey off the books, that's $3 million. That becomes $10 million. Sure. You trade Zaitsev, that's $14.5 million. If you want to trade Brown while you're at it, sure, that's about 16.6 or around there. You still need to sign Matthews and Marner and Kapanen, right? Let's say Gardner's gone, and that's $4 million. So that's $20 million, right? But you assume that Matthews is going to make around Tavares or Tavares money. So I would assume that around $10-11 million, maybe potentially more. I mean, I don't know. I'm not Matthews and I'm not Dubas, so I don't know for sure.
You're not?
But I would. I mean, if I was, that'd be pretty crazy. But I'm not. I would assume that he's going to make around the same amount of money as Tavares. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's up in Canada as Tavares, down here as Tavares. I don't know.
I think he's even said he doesn't care. Everyone has a different pronunciation. I think he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Tavares, but you can call me whatever. He's just such a nice guy.
Kind of like the Marchand situation. It's like, just call me whatever.
Oh yeah, but then 10 years into his career, he's going to be like, actually, I want you to call me by this now. And it's like, well, Brad, we've been calling you that for a decade. You can't change it up on us now. So
that's around $20 million, right? And with everybody gone, that can be gone. $20 million. Matthews is going to make around $12 million. So let's say he makes the same amount of money as Tavares, $11 million. That leaves $9 million for Mitch Marner, Kapanen. Lindholm is going to be a UFA, but I doubt he's going to ask for much. Is that enough? Is that enough to keep both Marner and Kapanen? Because I'm assuming that Marner's going to want a pretty dime because he's been one of your best players on the team this season. I'm sure he's going to want a pretty sizable contract, and that also leads Kapanen, and that also leaves the hole that Jake Gardner's he's gonna leave when he departs, which I'm assuming that he will. But as you said, the blue line I'm less so worried about because you have guys like Liljegren and other guys that could potentially step up to that role. But for Marner and for Kapanen, these are two guys are going to want, I mean, Kapanen less so, but Marner's going to want a pretty hefty deal, and there might not be enough room for both of them.
Well, that essentially means you have to somehow, I don't know, but you have to convince, I think it'll be a lot easier with Janssen than it will be Kapanen, but you have to convince either one or both of those guys to take Bridges, because Kapanen, I think at this moment, like, Kapanen's not going to be able to command like $5 million, but I'd say he's probably going to, I think top end of his value is going to be like 3.5. Janssen, probably a little bit higher than what Brown is right now. And so you have to hope that they'll be able to take Bridges. You need to be able to just get Zaitsev's cap hit off the books. Ron Hainsey's cap hit's going to come off the books as well. Hopefully get Connor Brown. So there are moves that you can make, and you have these young guys who can kind of come up and like I said, bridge that gap. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they do it. That also means that as much as you don't want to have a Nylander situation again, you also need to kind of play hardball with Marner, because as good as he is, he's phenomenal. He just cannot command like Matthews money, which I think is the rumor that's out right now, is that he thinks he's worth, or his family thinks he's worth every penny as much as Matthews. Just on the basis of his position, that's not true. So you need to you need to sort of play hardball with him, or essentially just look. This is a phenomenal, arguably for these players, once in a lifetime situation. You're in Toronto, the hotbed of the entire hockey world, whether people in Alberta want to admit that or not. It is. You have a team that is littered with superstars, young superstars, old superstars. It's just a once in a lifetime opportunity to be on a team that has this degree of talent and challenge and championship aspirations. And you need to be like, look, do you want to make an extra $1 million or $2 million over the course of an 8-year contract? That's fine for you. Go play in Carolina, and you can absolutely get that. But if you want to be part of something special, and obviously, your financial security is the foremost important. So this is a big if, and we're not going to tell you how to live your life. But if you want to be part of something special, if you want to literally be able to walk into the city of Toronto and never have to pay for a single thing ever again, then you'll take a bit of a haircut. We're not asking you to take like 75% of your value. Take a bit of a haircut so we can all make this work. And I don't feel great. I didn't feel great when Brendan Shanahan was like, when he was on the Red Wings, Brendan Shanahan said earlier this year that, we all took cap hits when there wasn't we all took discounts when there wasn't a salary cap at that point. So that doesn't kind of matter, but there needs to be sort of a sense of, you can make this money up in other ways. You can be part of something special here. We want people who want to be part of something special here, and and that's what's going to have to be the kind of modus operandi to make this work. So the numbers are going to be tight, that's for sure. But you have these young, skilled, cost-effective options that can come up through the system, and you'll be able to lock in your core for a huge hit. You have guys like if you get rid of Zaitsev, and Hainsey walks and trade Connor Brown and don't have to retain any salary. There are these hits that can make it work if you eke out a dollar here or there. That can kind of bridge that gap. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this happens. It's going to be fascinating to see what kind of tweener guys like Janssen and Kapanen come in at, because that will really kind of dictate how much room they have to work with. And the trade deadline is, I would say, it's a little bit less than a month away. And Dubas has said that he'd selfishly like to get Matthews' extension in before that, because Marner's not negotiating during the season. I think that there's a likelihood that could happen, because Dubas, number one, doesn't want to repeat a Nylander situation, also wants to have everything moving forward in front of him, all the information, and Matthews is not going anywhere. Like, he's obviously going to stay with his team. So the next couple,
would hope, right? Or at least Toronto hopes, right?
Okay, yeah. Those rumors where he's like, he's going to sign an offer sheet with Arizona and this, like, I feel like content needs to be shared. So good on you for creating content. But if you just look at him, look at his face whenever he's around his teammates. Look at how much fun he's having. Look at every Instagram he sends with Patrick Marleau and with all his kids around him. Like, these are players who don't want to leave. They just don't. This is where else is it better to play right now?
I really like how the first the first bullet point to why Matthews is staying is look at him.
Seriously,
just look at him.
It is that simple. Like everyone's like, oh well, if Arizona comes in and offers him $14 million a year on an offer sheet, he's got to take. Well, just look at him. Like, first of all, yeah, it'll be nice to play around home, but I don't know. I'm 22 years old, and I don't know about you, but I don't want to be living at home right now. I'm my own person. I want to be. There's a reason why I have my own place, and I'm pretty sure Matthew's the same way. Like, yes, it'd be nice to be around your family, but I'm pretty sure Matthew's parents come down here or come down to Toronto most of the time. So it's like that being close to home kind of argument for a guy who's 21 or 20 or however old he is right now. I don't like that. Like, just pump the brakes on that. Like, look, the Leafs can make this work. They've said that they're going to make this work. The numbers kind of back up the notion that they can make it work. It'll be tight, but they can. And the next month moving forward, and then also after that, the next 12 months, after the next calendar year after that, are going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm also kind of dreading it for the takes that are going to come out, but
you got a lot of them, a lot of takes, a lot of. It's Toronto. It's not, this is the Toronto media that we're talking about here. A lot of takes, gonna be a flying sooner rather than later. Just look at him. He says that's an incredible response. One last question before I let you go. I put out the poll question just before I started recording. Which of these 4 teams currently in a cup drought is most likely to win it first? I'm going to read you the 4 choices, and I'm not going to tell you which choice is in the lead. I'm going to do that after you choose which of the 4 you think is the correct answer. So the 4 choices are the Leafs, the Islanders, the Flames, and the Sharks. Which of the 4, in your opinion, is most likely to win the cup first?
So the Leafs, Islanders, Flames, and Sharks?
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely not the Islanders. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Win the cup, as much as it might be a little biased considering I live in the city that they're in and everything, and I cover the team and all that. But it's the Leafs. I mean, no other team that you just mentioned there can boast the depth, the talent, the expertise that's even compiling them all, the pipeline, everything. Like the Leafs right at this moment, right now, have everything going for them. They have a phenomenal, especially with the Jake Muzzin trade. They have arguably the best forward core in the entire NHL. That's arguably, but I mean, if you stack it up with anyone else, I mean, they come in a hair between each other. The defense core now with Jake Muzzin turned from one of the worst in the league into literally one of the best. Like, you can run out Riley, Muzzin, doesn't matter which one's on either side. Then you have Gardner and you want to get crazy. Gardner Zaitsev, if you want to keep that pairing together or whatever, and then you have Hainsey and Dermott, where you put Hainsey into finally his ideal usage, and a guy like Dermott who is phenomenal and is only getting better. And then you have a franchise goalie in Frederik Andersen, who if he didn't get hurt, would be a contender for the Vezina right now, and a guy like Garrett Sparks, who is a fine backup. He's probably going to get better. And even if he doesn't, you have Michael Hutchinson, who proved that he could handle the fort when he's gone. Even you have a third goalie like that. So right now the Leafs have everything going for them. There really should be no excuses to kind of challenge for a cup spot or challenge for a spot in the Stanley Cup Final. Sorry, and that's 100% my answer. I mean, it might sound biased, whatever, but
it's fair.
Totally no fair. Other team, like Calgary's doing great, but no other team has got Austin Matthews, John Tavares, William Nylander, Kasperi Kapanen, Andreas Janssen, Mitch Marner, the list goes on and on and on. And then Morgan Riley, Jake Gardner, Jake Muzzin, Travis Dermott, guys, Frederik Andersen. Like no team is able to boast the high end. Like that's a whole core of all the position groups that I've just mentioned, and they're all high end talent. Like every single piece that was just named is high end talent for where they are. No other team that was in that chart or in that poll can match that. They just can't.
That's a fair response. I mean, again, I chose the teams that, one, were in a playoff spot, and two, that are currently, I mean, not either leading their division or challenging for it. I mean, I could have went with the Lightning, but they won in '04. Not, I mean, it's a drought, I guess, because it's been 15 years, but not a super drought like the Leafs had, like the Islanders have had, like the Flames have, like the Sharks have, because they haven't won one at all. I mean, I could have said Pittsburgh, but I mean, Pittsburgh has won a couple in recent memory. And so of the teams that are in a firm playoff spot, I mean, the Wild haven't won one, but they're 3 points out. They're 3 points ahead of not being in the playoffs. So I didn't want to mention Minnesota. So these were the 4 teams that had a pretty solid drought and are in a formidable playoff spot. And I would have to agree. I mean, the Leafs are primed to, if not win this season, I mean, if not now, then when? I feel like with the Leafs, because they're so stacked right now.
Yeah, this is the best roster they've ever had.
Yeah, it's definitely, it has to be up there with one of the greatest lineups that the Leafs have ever had. And this team is built for success this season. And if they don't win this season, I mean, I would have to say it's a massive failure, right? I think that if they don't win this season, then when are they ever going to win? Because this is, again, one of the best lineups that this team has ever seen.
Well, I don't think it'd be a failure if they don't win this year. If they definitely don't at least make it to the second round, that is a colossal failure. But
sure.
We have to keep in mind as well, like, first of all, the Leafs aren't going to be the only team with cap problems moving forward. And I'd say their biggest challenger, unfortunately, they're going to meet incredibly early in the playoffs, is Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And so if they bow out to Tampa Bay right now, I mean, those teams, especially with Muzzin coming on board now, are pretty evenly stacked. They've got, the superstar goalies, the real high-end talent on both the back end and front end. But Tampa as well, they're going to be moving forward. They have some really difficult cap scenarios to kind of work out for themselves. Even teams that are up and coming, like the Jets, they've got some really difficult things to work out as well. So I would say even this year, it won't be like a colossal failure if the Leafs don't win the Stanley Cup. I mean, any team can kind of win that, and this is certainly their best shot I think they've ever had in the 50, the 50 years that they haven't won, or however many years it's been. I've literally lost count. It's been so long. But they also do have to run into Tampa, and so even if this year with Tampa they're at their full strength Goliath mode, whatever you want to call it, if they bow out to them, that's going to be disappointing. But it's not. It won't be like a gut punch. And moving forward, if they're able to keep that core together, like I said, of Matthews et al., and Tampa's got to make some interesting decisions, and they kind of deplete in talent a little bit, I think that's kind of the window where the Leafs can really challenge. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in these playoffs, because the playoff format is 100% broken, and one of the best teams in the league is not going to make their conference finals. So whether or not that ends up being the Leafs or whether that ends up being the Lightning when they inevitably meet in the second round, we'll have to see. But I think that the Leafs window, and Kyle Dubas has said this pretty staunchly ever since he took over, is that his intention is to open a contention window and keep it open for years to come. And I think Leafs contention window is fully open right now, and I think it's got a better chance of continuing to stay open down the line than maybe the other guys who are nipping at their heels right now, or who could maybe best them in a 7-game series at this moment have.
Fair enough. I can't really argue with that. Mike, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. Plug your social media, plug everything that you want to plug. Go right ahead.
Sounds good. I'm the Marlies beat writer for Fansided, so you can find all my work at Editor-in-Chief. I'm also the managing co-editor of the website, which is cool. I also host a great podcast where myself and Leaf Nation Network, Jake Stoller, he also works the Marlies beat. It's called Leafs on Deck, and we break down everything that's going on with the Leafs pipeline, specifically the Marlies. And so you check that out on iTunes, SoundCloud, or not SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that kind of stuff. And then my Twitter account is @MikeyStevens81. And you can find me either tweeting about hockey or tweeting about random stuff.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mike, for coming on. Really appreciate you giving me some time to talk about the Leafs that are always in the news. Myrtle, I follow Myrtle, and he's a constant on my timeline. With some takes as per usual. I really appreciate you coming on. I'll talk to you again real soon.
My pleasure, man. Anytime.
Awesome, thank you. The second half of the show is dedicated to the New York Islanders, a team that lost their best player and seemingly got worse, yet find themselves on top of the Metropolitan Division. How did they get here? We'll talk Barry Trotz's influence on the young team and how much of an impact he's made behind closed doors. And on the bench, Jordan Eberle's having a down year, just 11 goals and 23 total points in 45 games this season. His contract ends at the end of this season. Is he staying or is he going? Do the Islanders want him to stay? I mean, I would assume so, but where would he fit in if he were to leave? Also, what's the status on Josh Hosang? 2 points in 10 games with the Islanders this season. He keeps getting bounced between Bridgeport and the Islanders. 23 years old, RFA at the end of the season. Does he potentially want out? What is his view on the situation? Also, before we get going here, I just want to apologize real quick to Robin Lehner, because before the season started, I said I didn't like him as a starting goaltender in the league and thought he was average. Well, that might have been true at the time. Since then, he's been very open about the demons that haunt him and how he's beating them en route to playing the best hockey of his career. He's proven me wrong, and I just want to acknowledge that, and I'm glad he's doing all right. Also, the Islanders, I'm assuming, will be buyers at the deadline. Who are they potentially looking at, and what specifically are they looking to improve? We'll get into all of that, of course, the poll question, and a whole lot more. Joining me for the second time on Chel Squared is Isles columnist for WFAN, Andy Graziano. Andy, how are you?
How are you, Andrew? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm doing okay. Again, Porzingis, we talked a little bit about that before I clicked record here. Porzingis traded. I am a sad human being right now. He is my favorite player on the Knicks, and I'm very disappointed, but pretty good otherwise. I can't complain in other aspects for sure. Man. So before we get into the super nitty gritty here, Andy, super ultra incredibly important question for you. Are you for or against oatmeal raisin cookies?
I am absolutely 100% for the oatmeal raisin cookies.
I'm very glad we're on the same page.
Big buyer.
I feel like they're not popular because they quote unquote resemble chocolate chip cookies, and people are disappointed when they munch into one.
There's so much more than that. There's so much more than just a plain chocolate chip cookie, in my opinion.
Oatmeal raisin is I first of all, I want to preface this by saying I haven't eaten cookies in a while because again, I'm on a new lifestyle diet where no cookies, no fat, no nothing like that.
But you know what? I figured out the secret. Like the other day, I was food shopping with my wife, and I saw the new peanut butter graham cracker Oreos.
Ooh!
And I just had to get them.
Right.
And I looked at the label, and I look at the nutrition label now on things I buy. And believe it or not, I never thought I would be that way, but I am. And I figured out that I could have, like when I get back from the gym, I can have one or two, right? I just can't have 10.
Right. That's fair.
Which is kind of like the old me, right? I mean, I could have one or two cookies. It's not going to kill you. Everything in moderation, they say, right?
Sure.
With the exception of smoking. That's the only thing that's not good in moderation. But
very true also.
So yeah, I mean, I can have one or two cookies. I just can't have 10. So that's kind of how I think of it. So you know what? If I'm craving an oatmeal raisin cookie, I can have just one.
That's very true. I mean, I tweeted this today that I never thought I would be the person that would set an alarm early to go to the gym when it's 9 degrees out. It was 9 degrees out this morning. And I've turned into that person now. My personal trainer, Nico, has turned me into that person where
I actually go at night after work. That's hardcore. The people that go in the morning, I have mad props for, man. Because that is hardcore.
Yeah, it's super tough. Because I mean, I used to just be in awe of my friends that would do that. They would be like, oh yeah, I wake up at 5 a.m, go to the gym, and then go to class. And I'd just be like, what? That's wild. But now Nico has turned me into that person where, all right, so I'm going to set my alarm early. We're going to go, and then I'm going to get on with my day. And I never thought I would be that kind of person. And now I have found myself in that realm. And I haven't had cookies in, oh boy, I started doing this right after college, so like about a month and a half ago. No cookies, nothing like that. So I might squeeze in a cookie here or there, and maybe
See,
now
but
that
here's
you
the thing:
mention
if
that.
you don't squeeze one in here and there, what's the fear the fear that could happen? And speaking seriously for a moment, this happens with people who have quit alcohol, for instance, right? Alcoholics who have gotten off the booze and gotten themselves clean and sober. Some people do that, what they call it, by using moderation, right? Because what they find is that if you deprive yourself of something you want for too long, and then one day down the road you end up having one, that one could realistically turn into 15.
That's
You
true.
deprive yourself of it for so long.
No,
So just keep that in mind.
No, that's very true, and you're absolutely right on that. I mean, I do have the cheat meal occasionally. I ordered Chinese food a couple of days ago. I mean, listen,
There you go.
you like obviously you can't be super strict about doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all the time. I mean, you have to have something once in a while to kind of be like, okay, well, because you have to enjoy yourself sometimes, right? Because if you aren't enjoying your diet and the way that you approach, your nutrition, then you're gonna hate it. So you have to kind of balance that out. Not a lot, obviously, but at least once in a while, just kind of be like, okay, well, I've been eating well, been working out. I can have this one thing, and it won't kill me.
Totally agree.
So before we lose everybody here, the Islanders, right? They're first in the Metro, to the surprise of everyone in the league, I would assume. I mean, this team lost their best player and seemingly have gotten better, although obviously we talked prior to the season starting. I mean, they signed some pretty bad contracts with Filppula and Spiza, and yet they're doing so much better than what anyone thought they would. I mean, obviously it can't be the super secret, because if it was a secret, then you wouldn't be able to tell me. But what's the secret behind their success? Is it all on Barry Trotz? Is it a mix between Trotz and the approach the team has? I mean, obviously on paper this team isn't very good, and yet Lehner's playing very well. Greiss is playing very well. You have just the combination of players that are exceeding expectations and playing super well. So what is the secret behind their success?
I hesitate to use I hesitate to use the Vegas Golden Knights from last year as an example, but I will. And I'm not in any way comparing what they accomplished in their first season in the National Hockey League to what the Islanders could accomplish this year, because let's face it, none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen from this point out. There's still 33 games remaining in the regular season. That's a lot of hockey, and it's going to be a lot of hockey in a short, condensed time due to the bye week. I believe the Islanders have their final 33 games in 65 days. So it's going to be a long road from here on out. It's not going to get any easier. But when I say I'm comparing, when I compare them, I usually go back to when I looked at the Vegas Golden Knights last season post-expansion draft. And I looked at their roster and I said, I literally turned to my son and said, there's absolutely no way this team wins 25 games. Looking at their roster on paper, there's just no way. And look what happened. Gerard Gallant comes in, puts in a system that plays to the strengths of the players that he had, and minimizes the deficiencies that they had. And they truly did play for each other. They truly did play and come together as a group instead of playing as individuals, which some NHL teams do. There was no egos on that team. And I think that is the comparison that I make from last year's Golden Knights to this year's New York Islanders. I think when Lou Lamoriello was hired, he hit an absolute grand slam in hiring Barry Trotz. It literally fell into the Islanders' lap, right? The Capitals weren't going to pay Trotz, but he felt he was worth coming off a Stanley Cup.
Which was a terrible decision. I mean, as an aside.
In hindsight, but you know what? The Capitals are doing okay. They're not doing so bad. So, but Barry Trotz literally fell into the Islanders' lap, and John Ledecky and Scott Malkin were convinced that they could turn this team around. They were convinced that they can get this team back to playing winning hockey, and they spared no expense in hiring Trotz. Obviously, coaches' contracts are not disclosed, but I'm assuming that Trotz is making in the $4 to $5 million range annually, which puts him in the upper echelon of paid coaches in the National Hockey League, probably right behind Mike Babcock in Toronto. So, they spared no expense, and Lamoriello hit it out of the park in getting Trotz to come over, even with the John Tavares saga at that time hanging over everybody's head. Then what happens? Tavares leaves. Lamoriello tries to plug. Filppula and Spiza I don't mind so much because they're one-year deals. Filppula's played really, really well. Spiza, in the games that he has been able to get into, has done admirably. The Komarov contract was the one I think that eventually will come back to bite them. You give a 4-year deal with a no trade clause to Leo Komarov. That's stretching it a little bit, but Leo has come in and been an absolutely ridiculously positive impact on the locker room, as has Matt Martin, who Lamoriello reacquired from Toronto. And I think you heard Matt Barzal say it at the All-Star game about, nobody is treated differently. And look, the Toronto media immediately jumped on top of that, saying, oh my God, that was a dig at Tavares. I don't think it was. I just think it was Barzal in general speaking to the fact that they truly have come together as a group, as one cohesive unit, and they're truly playing for each other. There's individual accolades do not matter on that team, and that's something that Barry Trotz really, really stresses in the room. Is that, you guys play for it's kind of like going back to the movie Miracle, right? You play for the logo on the front, not the name on the back. And I think that's truly what we're seeing with a roster that, you're right, on paper, coming out of the offseason, didn't look like it was capable of being in first place at this point in the season. But thanks to Trotz and his defensive system that he's put in, he's gotten every player to buy into it. And like Gerard Gallant last year, he is playing a system that's playing to his players' strengths, to what they have. He's not trying to play a system that's designed for players that he doesn't have. And I think that's the real key. And for me right now, there really is no other candidate for the Jack Adams Award than Barry Trotz. I mean, right now he is far away the runaway leader. And if the Islanders, I wrote today on WFAN.com, if the Islanders were to play a little over 500 hockey the rest of the season, let's say 16, 15, and 2, their final 33 games, they finish with 97 points, which historically has gotten teams into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. So, I always like to say that it's so important in the first 40, 45 games or so, that first half of the season, to put as many points in the bank as you can, because then you can always withdraw against that later, right? When you get into February and March and the schedule gets into 60 games and 70 games and it becomes that grind. If you banked all those points early, you can make some withdrawals against that and still be in pretty good shape. And I think that's really right now where the Islanders find themselves. All the major sites have averaged them out to roughly a 95% chance of making the playoffs. And that's a position that they've put themselves in at the moment. They begin play after the bye tomorrow at home against Tampa. And they will still be in first place when they drop the puck. So it's been an incredible transformation, especially on the defensive side of the puck.
So in your opinion, then, where's the line between a bad team on paper not playing well versus a bad team on paper playing well above their expectations? Is it all in coaching? Is it in the mentality of the team? Is it kind of both? Because you mentioned the Golden Knights, and there was that kind of sense of nobody wants us, so we're going to prove to the league why they shouldn't have cast us aside. And then there they went all the way to the final the first year. Is this kind of the same mentality of no one believes in us, we'll show the league what we can do?
Absolutely. It was, the Islanders had a huge chip on their shoulder when Tavares left. John is still close with several members of the Islanders, and they'll be friends forever, just like John stayed in touch with and stayed very close to, Matt Molson, Kyle Oposo when they moved on, Franz Nielsen as well. So, John still has a lot of friends on this team. They're still friendly off the ice, but yeah, this team had a chip on their shoulder coming off because everyone wrote them off, and they knew it. We like to think that these players don't see what's being written in the media. Believe me, they do. They see it. They feel things about it. They have emotions about it. And they saw everybody running them off. And, this team's going nowhere without Tavares. Their captain just left. This organization's in disarray. They're going to, they might fold. I mean, a lot of crazy stuff was written after Tavares' departure. And that clearly gave them a chip on their shoulder for sure. And then you have a guy, like I said, like Barry Trotz, who comes in and installs the system that truly plays to the players' strengths, and they believe in Trotz. I mean, how could you not believe in Trotz? The guy walks in there fresh off a Stanley Cup championship, flashing his bling around the locker room, saying, "You guys want one of these?" Waving his hand around. "Listen to me, I'll get you there." And they're sitting back saying, "Well, we know he could get us there because he got the Capitals there." So it's like he's not just spewing off like a coach who's never won, saying, "I can get you there," right? Because he's been there and he's won it. So I think the coaching system, along with the coaching philosophy, along with the chip that they're playing with on their shoulders, has put them where they are today.
If you would have told me when we first talked before the season started that Val Filppula and Jordan Eberle on January 31st would have the same amount of goals, I would have laughed in your face and ended the call right then and there. Right now, as of January 31st, 2019, Val Filppula and Jordan Eberle both have 11 goals. Jordan Eberle has played 45 games, Filppula has played 47, but regardless, they've scored the same amount of goals. Eberle has 2 more assists. He has 12, Filppula has 10. Jordan Eberle, for on paper anyway, obviously you watch the Islanders more than I do. On paper, at least, it seems like Eberle is having a down year. This is also his contract year. He is a UFA at the end of this season. What's going on with Eberle? Is there something going on with Eberle? Because he doesn't seem like he's producing as much as he perhaps should be. And again, is the contract weighing on him more than it should? I mean, is there a particular thing that you could point to and say, yeah, this is probably the reason why he's not scoring or he's not putting up points, or should we not be talking about it at all? Should it just not be a concern if you're an Islanders fan?
Eberle's been playing a lot better as of late, and I think there's no doubt that early in the season he was gripping the stick really tight, as they say. I do think the contract had some to do with that. He has not talked contract with the Islanders to date. So obviously that's a big thing weighing on his mind, especially with the trade deadline coming up at the end of this month. So that definitely was part A. Part B, he missed some time with a mysterious undisclosed injury. And I kind of wonder if that maybe had something to do with his first half as well, not being up to Jordan Eberle's standards. I don't know if that was truly injury related or if it was personal related. I think the one aspect that gets overlooked a lot, and again, I'm not sourcing anything, I'm not saying this is true or fact, but what is fact is that what gets overlooked a lot by fans is that these players, when they leave the rink after a game, go home to lives just like we have. The only difference is they have a lot more money than we do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And they play hockey for a living.
They have wives. They have children. They have parents. They have grandparents. They have lives just like we do. And things happen in life, as we know, that can sometimes affect you in your professional life, whether you're a hockey player or you're a banker. It doesn't matter. So, and again, I'm not saying that happened, but I'm just trying to kind of piece things together on why he did start so slow. He seems to have found his game lately, which is good for the Islanders and good for him contractually, right? I personally still see him as being the only movable roster asset right now on the Islanders come the trade deadline. If the Islanders are going to make a big deal and it's going to involve an NHL player going back, I would think all signs point to him being the most logical one. Because I don't think, if you're sitting back and you're Jordan Eberle, are you going to take a reduction in pay off his $6 million AAV right now? You're really not. You're not going to take $5 million to stay with the Islanders. You're not going to take probably $5.5 million to stay with the Islanders. You're likely not going to take $6 million to play with the Islanders. If you look at Jordan Eberle's historical career stats, he's been very, very consistent. 25 goals, 60 to 65 points on the button almost every year. Super consistent, super professional, a player that any team would love to have on their roster. So he's looking at getting a raise on his current $6 million AAV. And the Islanders, with Anders Lee to still sign, with Brock Nelson to still sign, they're probably going to have to look at the possibility of re-signing Robin Lehner in the offseason, who's only on a 1-year deal. Then you have, Matt Barzal after next season is coming off his entry-level contract. So, you want to keep some money around to see what big free agents come out that you may want to take a dip into, especially with their new stadium at Belmont Park opening up in a couple of years. So I just don't see the money being there to pay a Jordan Eberle $6.5 or $7 million AAV. I just don't. And so I think, that obviously I know it would play on my mind if I was in his position. I don't see no reason why it wouldn't be playing on his as well. But lately he has been much, much better, and the Islanders are going to need him to continue this push that they're making to the top of the Eastern Conference.
So I'm assuming they're going to be buyers, right? Because I would assume that most teams that are at the top of their division would be buyers at the deadline. Which position, in your opinion, are the Islanders looking to improve the most? Whether it be the offense, the defense. I'm assuming the goaltending situation is fine as is. But is it the blue line or is it the offense? Maybe the depth scoring that the Islanders need to fix. I mean, because they have their first round draft pick this season. They don't have their second, but they have Calgary's from the Hamonic deal, and they don't have their third or their fourth. So if they were to try to move their draft picks for a rental or a rental type player, they would either have to move their first round draft pick this year, or unless teams want Calgary's second this year, then they have to move their futures. Now, are the Islanders ready to do that? Are they ready to start buying, or are they looking to stand pat, see where they are? I mean, what's the plan for Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders moving very, very quickly towards the trade deadline?
I think that the Islanders are in a really funny situation right now because you had Barry Trotz saying a couple of weeks ago prior to the break that, this is a process. They're in the process of retooling this organization and retooling this team, and they're not even close to being there yet. That's what Barry Trotz said. I'm not quoting. It was along those lines. I don't remember the exact quote he said, but it was along those lines. You had Lou Lamoriello coming out today as the Islanders reconvened for practice at Northville Health Ice Center in Long Island that, the Islanders have played well to this point. But again, I'm paraphrasing, but can't sit on their laurels. There's still a lot of work to be done. We have
or they're Yannies, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it puts the Islanders in a tough spot because they don't have. If you're talking about not wanting to trade a Noah Dobson, Oliver Wahlstrom, Kiefer Bellows, right, guys of that ilk who are their top prospects, you can maybe even throw a Bodie Wild in there. They really don't have much to play with. And as you said, they don't have their own second. They have no third and fourth. So I'm not even sure there's a lot there to play with in the rental market. But it's tough for me to see a major deal going down with the Islanders, even though they may want to do one. I think they're best right now looking for depth moves that may be improving the offensive capabilities of their third line, which right now is Filppula centering Leo Komarov and Michael Dal Colle. While that line has been good, they haven't been offensive. They're not generating much. Especially, you have Dal Colle, who's a rookie, still getting his feet wet in the league. You have Komarov, who's not really an offensive force at all. So Filppula is really struggling in that role to try to be like the only guy that's really generating much from that third line. You have the fourth line, which is widely considered the best fourth line in hockey with Casey Cizikas, Cal Clutterbuck, and Matt Martin. But they're a line that scores in spurts, right? They have a couple of games where they kind of put some goals in the net, and then they go 10 without even sniffing the net. So I think if you're the Islanders, you're looking for a little more depth on those bottom two lines. Everyone keeps saying defense, but I'm not sure Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello are in a rush to change anything to a defensive unit that is number one in the NHL in goals allowed. I'm not sure you want to change much of the chemistry that they have going on back there. Devon Toews has come up and made a tremendous, tremendous impact. You still have Thomas Hickey, who's going to be coming back from injury shortly. He's, skating on his own. He's going to be skating with the Islanders in optionals. He's coming back from a concussion. Andrew Ladd, who broke his ankle earlier in the season, is going to be coming back soon. So that might be just what they need on that third line to maybe inject a little bit more offense. Again, with Hickey coming back, you can always swap Hickey for a struggling Adam Pelech on defense. I don't think you're looking to take out any more major guys or make any major changes to a blue line that to date has been the best defensive team in hockey. And So I really don't know that there's much there for Lamoriello to do, honestly. And if you're asking me what I would expect, and the trade market, I'll just preface, is impossible to predict, as we all know.
Sure.
Things change not hour to hour, but they change minute to minute, seemingly. So something always comes out of left field. And Lamoriello's been known to pull things out of left field. But if you're asking me what I think is going to happen, I think the Islanders will either make a quiet depth move or do nothing at all and roll with what they have.
What about Josh Ho-Sang? See, I mean, I'm sure you've talked about this ad nauseum for the past couple months now, but what are you going to do with Josh Ho-Sang? I mean, he's 23 years old. He's been bounced around the NHL and the AHL. He either starts playing a game and then he gets sent down, or he's kind of in purgatory right now. His contract's over at the end of this season. He's going to be an RFA. I mean, what's the plan with Ho-Sang moving forward? Is he a part of the Islanders' future, or do they have other plans? Because again, I'm an outsider, so obviously you know more about this than I do, which is why I'm asking you. But it kind of just seems like to me that he's being bounced around without really having an idea as to what they want to do with him. But again, this is why I'm asking you, do they have an idea as to what they want to do with Josh Ho-Sang moving forward? Do they just want to tender him and wait it out? Are they going to actually offer him a contract? Do they want to move him? I mean, is Josh Ho-Sang going to be an Islander for much longer?
I think that if they could move him, they would. Absolutely. I think the problem with Josh Ho-Sang is Josh Ho-Sang. I think the problem with Josh Ho-Sang is, he's taking longer than the Islanders would like to become a true professional and come and work at that level that all of his teammates are working at. And kind of cut back on the extracurricular stuff that kids in their younger 20s will often get into. I'm not blaming Josh Ho-Sang for that. I just think that when you're in the position that he's in with the talent level that he has, which is immense, and the opportunity that he was given when the Islanders recalled him, and, you're looking at a production level, and yes, he only had 2 points in 10 games, but his advanced stats were off the charts. He was generating offense. He made the team better and more dynamic. There's no doubt about that. So why did he get sent down is the big question. And I think that you would have to assume that it was something off-ice related. Nothing obviously has come out officially from the team. Nothing has been sourced, because I think that, Lou Lamoriello keeps things very close to his vest and absolutely detests any leaks of any sort. He'll come after your whole family if he has to. But so I think that, but again, if you're thinking of it logically, a player that made the Islanders better and made the Islanders more dynamic, and they still send him down, you have to kind of question why that is. And maybe it's just not what you're seeing right in front of you is the reason. So that's why when I say Josh Ho-Sang's problem is Josh Ho-Sang, that's exactly what it is. But I don't think he has any value right now. Word about that gets around pretty fast. So if it is what I'm suspecting, word got around to other GMs pretty quickly of that. So Josh Ho-Sang, I don't think right now has much trade value. I think if the Islanders could move him, they would. But I think they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place between, waiting for him to grow up. And maybe they do tender him, in the summer, just to kind of keep him their property. You don't really want to lose any assets for nothing. And the fact that he is an RFA keeps him in Islanders control. And I'm not sure Josh is really at the point where he could be demanding anything. So it'll probably be a really quick negotiation if it does go that way. But for sure, I think if the Islanders get an opportunity to move him, I think he will definitely be moved if that opportunity presents itself to Lamoriello, for sure.
Well, one last question here before I let you go. The Islanders' future, the future of this team, right? They have just under $10 million in cap space according to Cap Friendly right now, right? Let's say the cap goes up $3 million, and let's say they have $13 million in cap. Now, Jordan Eberle comes off the books. Let's assume Jordan Eberle moves on, right? So let's say that $6 million is added to the cap. So now they have, let's say, what?
And then take Filppula off. I don't think he'll be back.
So that's 13 plus 6, that'd be $19 million. And you have Filppula. I'm gonna round up for because I'm not good at math. Let's say you got $22 million of cap space, and Lucas Spisa's gone. So you have $23.5 million in cap space, roughly. So that leads Robin Leiter to be signed, which I'm assuming you're gonna do. But Villiers needs to be signed. Del Call needs to be signed. Nelson and Lee, right? With Lee and Nelson, I would assume are going to get pay raises.
They're the tough ones. Yeah, they're the tough ones.
And Robin Leonard.
I think Beauvillier and Del Cole are easy. Leonard has probably worked his way into the 4.5 range.
Yeah.
And then you have Lee and Nelson who are going to be decent hits on the books.
Yeah. Which leaves you, I mean, again, I'm not good at math, so I'm not gonna pretend to know the number in my head here. But let's say, hypothetically, right, at the end of all of your signings, you have around $8, $9, $10 million to sign whoever you want, and you have to replace Jordan Eberle, who's now gone to somewhere else. Who are the biggest targets that the Islanders are looking at? Obviously, Panarin has been talked about ad nauseum for forever now, it seems like. Either the Rangers or the Islanders, or, I mean, I don't know. Panarin's a name for pretty much any team on a coast right now, which is where Panarin wants to play. So it remains to be seen where he goes. But let's forget about Panarin for a second here. What are some other names that the Islanders could potentially look at to replace a Jordan Eberle, to replace to get a name in here that could improve the team for the better right away?
I think what they're going to be looking at is they're going to kind of let the trade market happen at the end of February. They're going to let the pending free agents who are going to re-sign with their teams do that. Then Lamoriello is going to have to really sit back and think about adding depth at the center position. That's really, really where I think the Islanders need the help. I think their defense, again, with Devon Toews playing terrific this year. They still have Sebastian Aho, who was an AHL All-Star this year in Bridgeport. They have Parker Witherspoon, who could be a good defenseman in Bridgeport. You still have Noah Dobson and Bodie Wild to come. On the wing, replacing Jordan Eberle, don't forget you have Oliver Wahlstrom and Kiefer Bellows who need wing spots. Right? You still have to find out what you have in Michael Del Cole. Can he be an everyday top two, 1 or 2 line player? So I think they have capable prospects that can step in and fill the positions at wing and defense. It's really, really down the middle where I think the Islanders suffer the most in the depth department. And that's really where they're going to have to look. If they do re-sign Brock Nelson, which I think they will, it still gives them a hole in that third center spot, given the assumption that Val Filppula doesn't come back, right? You have Matt Barzal, you have Brock Nelson, there's the gap, and then you have Casey Cizikas. So I think that the center position is going to be the big position that you're going to look at. The problem is who really is going to be available that's going to command a pretty penny. As you said, the Islanders are going to have the money to offer a guy a decent enough contract to come over in the, let's say, $8 to $9 million range. So the money's going to be there for, I'm talking a top center, where you can maybe even bump Brock Nelson down to a third line role and put this new guy into a second line role, in which case you strengthen your team down the middle even more. But of all the positions in the Islanders organization, it is clearly and without a doubt for me the center position that needs the most help.
Well, there's been some mumblings around the league now. Again, again, none of these are obviously confirmed, and the whole like. But apparently, Matt Duchene does not want to remain in Ottawa, and the Islanders have the cap space to.
And he's been a guy that's been on their radar for 2 years now.
Yeah. I mean, again, the mumblings haven't connected him to any team, but the idea is that the Ottawa Senators are only going to give him $8 million, and they don't want to give him more than that. And Duchene does not want $8 million. He obviously wants more than that because he is very good at his job. So I'm kind of connecting the dots here for the mumblings. For the rumblings and the mumblings, if you may. Again, I don't know how accurate these things are, but it would seem to me
that I would say is pretty accurate. Like I said, the Islanders have had him on their radar for 2 years now, and there's one thing we know about Lou Lamoriello. What Lou Lamoriello wants, Lou Lamoriello usually gets, and on his terms too. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So if Matt, I don't see a situation where the Islanders are going to pony up the assets needed to acquire Duchesne now in a prior to deadline trade. I don't see that. We talked about that before. Why? But in the offseason, as you said, things change dramatically. The landscape changes dramatically. If he truly does not re-sign in Ottawa and does make it to July 1st, I expect Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders to be major players for Matt Duchesne. And I think all Islander fans would probably drool over the prospect of having Matt Barzal, Matt Duchesne, Brock Nelson, and Casey Cizikas as their top 4 centers.
Sure. I mean, if you can't get Panarin, then obviously the next best thing is a Matt Duchesne.
And I would see that falling if I would probably go, see like an $8.5 to $9 million AAV for a Matt Duchesne, who's also will fix another one of the Islanders' biggest needs, and that's faceoffs. Matt Duchesne is an excellent faceoff man, and that's another thing the Islanders struggle with. So
Erik Karlsson's a UFA if you want to go there.
From the Islanders to Matt Duchesne.
Erik Karlsson is going to be a UFA at the end of this season if you really want to go there and go all out.
Erik Karlsson's going to be a Ranger.
Really?
That's what I believe. That's what I believe. I believe that the Rangers have a really good shot at landing Erik Karlsson and Artemi Panarin.
See, I feel like you're saying that because I'm a Rangers fan, because now I have this huge smile on my face. I'm glowing now. My smile is from ear to ear now. I mean, I can't even imagine the prospect of having Karlsson and Panarin on this team next year. I mean, I have the Rangers game in the background right now. They're getting obliterated from a Devils team that's not very good. I mean, the Rangers aren't very good to begin with. But this team is looking real bad. But if you add Panarin and Karlsson to the team, I mean, now you've got me. Now I'm interested. Now I'm interested in what you're selling.
Defense is their biggest. They've been searching for a true offensive power play quarterback defenseman since Brian Leetch left, and Erik Karlsson fits that mold. Fits that mold perfectly. Artemi Panarin, we know, wants to play on the East Coast, whether that's in New York, whether that's in Florida because of the locale. I don't think it's in Philly. I don't think it's possible in Washington. So you have to look at the New York teams. You have to look at Florida as being destinations for Panarin. I have heard whispers that he does, he would like the prospect of playing at Madison Square Garden. So to me, it just makes sense, right? From what I'm hearing, from what I'm seeing out of the Rangers, Gordon clearing a lot of cap space. He'll probably clear more leading up to the deadline if he moves a Matt Zuccarello, if he moves a Kevin Hayes, if he even considers moving a Chris Kreider, which I don't think is a great idea. But it's all to free up money, and with money the Rangers can go shopping, and it could happen. I'm not saying it will or it won't, but my gut feeling is that it could very well happen.
Well, now I can't get rid of the smile, Andy. I mean, you're leaving me here with an incredible hope. I mean, now the Rangers are getting me interested in 2 big free agents. The Knicks now have over $74 million in cap space to potentially sign 2 players to max contracts. Baby Kyrie and KD. I mean, I don't know. There's a whole lot of what ifs right now in New York sports.
I was teasing my son the other day, who's a Ranger fan. I was teasing him the other day. He's at school right now, finishing up his senior year, and I was talking with him on the phone. And we were kind of chatting hockey, and I told him, I said, I kind of threw the lore out there. I said, could you imagine if the Rangers continue to tank, end up drafting Jack Hughes, and then go out and sign Karlsson and Panarin?
That would be ridiculous.
You're talking about a 1-year rebuild.
Yeah.
Not even a 1-year rebuild, a 6-month rebuild.
Pretty much.
Now, granted, they still have to figure out what they have in goal, right? Because Henrik Lundqvist is kind of riding off into the sunset. His skills are eroding. Is Georgiev the man? Okay,
you're losing me now. You're losing me now because he's still one of the best goalies in the league. He has nothing in front of him. I mean, it's tough
to future Hall of Famer, but
it's tough to be good when it's tough to be good in this league if you're a goaltender when you constantly have great opportunities in front of you with zero sense of help in front of you.
They know that. Islander fans know that all too well. Last year, the Islanders were the worst defensive team in hockey, and this year you see what a true defensive system can do for a team.
Sure.
So, but again, Henrik Lundqvist is 38, so yeah, they're going to have to start eventually looking at what they have in goal for the future. He's not going to be around forever, and he's a surefire Hall of Famer in my book. There's no question about that. Not even a question. First ballot, put him in. But he is 38, and he's not the same goalie he was even 4 years ago. That's just facts.
Sure.
Not because I don't like Henrik Lundqvist. I think I have a lot of respect for the man.
Well, I never said you don't like him. I'm not saying that. I didn't say that. Who said that? Because I didn't say that.
True. Good point. Well said.
I did not say that.
There.
I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, they got Shesterkin, who is said to be by people that watch him. I mean, I don't watch prospects, so I'm not an expert on this at all. But from people that are smarter than me in prospect gauging, I understand that Shesterkin is kind of the second coming of Lundqvist. So hopefully, big hope there that he can come over from Russia and just kind of carry the torch for the Rangers in goal. Hopefully, again.
Then you got to look forward to Kravtsov too. So.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very interesting summer in Manhattan. It's going to be a very interesting summer to see what Jeff Gordon does with, especially again if he's able to free up cap space at the deadline. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what he does in order to remake that roster, and if he accelerates his process by going big game hunting. It'll be really interesting.
The letter has changed the game. Gordon is out here changing the game on the NHL, and that is very, very intriguing. Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show, for giving me this huge smile that now I can't get rid of.
Anytime, Andrew. You can always count on me, buddy.
I really appreciate you coming on, and plug your social media, plug where people can listen to you on WFAN and they can read your stuff.
Yeah, they can read me on WFAN.com/Islanders. All my stuff gets published there, and they can follow me on Twitter at @AndyGraz_WFAN.
Awesome. Thanks again, Andy, for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. I'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks, Andrew. Take care.
Absolutely. And that was episode number 33 of Chel Squared. I'm your host, Andrew Chel. Episode number 34 coming up next week. I'll talk to you then.